The Grand Convocation Dome floated above the neutral asteroid ZYX-9 like a suspended chandelier of ivory glass and humming light. 72 species had gathered within, their banners unfurling into atmosphere-controlled space, and not one of them looked particularly thrilled to be breathing the same oxygen as a human. Evelyn Park sat alone at the table's far end, a small figure in a tidy navy blazer, sipping from a porcelain cup she'd brought from Earth. The other representatives sipped mist, plasma, nutrient sludge. She preferred chamomile. It was civil. A Vrith AK general, all scaled snout, ceremonial blades, and swollen ego, slammed a claw against the voting slab. The human speaks last. By statute, by stature. A low murmur of agreement followed, as did a soft mechanical click from the insectoid Zeeks who logged every utterance into their endless bureaucratic archives. Evelyn didn't flinch. "Oh, I was planning on it." The Vrith AK narrowed both horizontal eyes. "Speak only when called Earthborn." Evelyn offered a smile that belonged on a kindergarten teacher. "Of course. I wouldn't dream of impoliteness." Politeness, she'd learned long ago, made aliens nervous. They expected defiance. They feared rage. What they didn't understand was a quiet voice paired with a steady hand. She returned to her notebook, paper, spiral-bound, almost laughably primitive compared to the holograms pulsing in front of the others. She wrote in cursive. Slowly. The Dalkari philosopher of Fifth Stream turned toward her, translucent folds jiggling with smug delight. "I must say, Ambassador Park, your presence is admirably outdated. A quaint museum of a dying species." She didn't even look up. "That's sweet. Are you offering to donate your brain to the museum when you're finished using it?" The Dalkari froze, gelatinous gills fluttering. The Vrith AK chortled, but only to make the Dalkari more uncomfortable. Evelyn sipped again, entirely composed. The speaker of the convocation, a multi-eyed crustacean from the high-pressure oceans of Talmar, struck its central gavel, a noise like a wet thunderclap. "Order. The Assembly will proceed to vote." This was the moment. The proposal, masked in bureaucratic niceties and hypocritical diplomacy, was simple. To reduce tensions across the quadrant, the Earth delegation would offer symbolic submission. Evelyn Park, the last diplomat Earth had sent to the Assembly, would be remanded to custody. No shackles, no violence. Just managed containment for observation. A euphemism with a long history and short survival rates. The humans had declined to vote. They didn't need to. The Vrith AK voted aye. The Dalkari followed. The Malthera cast a shimmer of gas into the approval chamber. The Zeeks clicked with bureaucratic finality. All 72. Unanimous. Evelyn closed her notebook gently. "Well," she said, standing slowly. "That certainly simplifies things." There was a pause, a too long silence where every ambassador expected outrage, indignation, a plea. Evelyn simply reached into her blazer, pulled out a sealed envelope, and slid it onto the table. "For the record," she said, "Earth accepts your terms." The speaker leaned forward, squinting with its central eye. "You? What?" "We accept." She looked around, calm as a quiet stream. "Thank you for your time. I'll gather my things." A Dalkari gasped, a sound like a deflating balloon. "You mean to comply?" "Just like that. Why wouldn't I?" Evelyn smiled. "After all, you voted." The Vrith AK leaned in, suspicion twitching behind his fangs. "Is this sarcasm?" She tilted her head. "If it were sarcasm, I'd be smiling wider." They scanned her face. She wasn't smiling wider. If anything, she looked relieved. Two Zarthian security guards, four-armed, bat-faced, and clearly confused, approached. One reached for her wrist hesitantly, like touching a ceremonial relic. She held her arms out. "I'll walk," she said. "I don't believe in being carried unless unconscious." A few aliens chuckled, nervous. Others frowned. As she passed the Dalkari's hovering platform, she paused. "Oh, before I forget." He turned, expecting an insult. "Tell your daughter," Evelyn said softly, That her hair looks better in red, not blue. Red makes her look less desperate. The Dalkari stuttered, eyes widening. How? She didn't reply. They led her out. The dome pulsed with discomfort. Aliens glanced at one another, trying to rationalize what had just happened. The Zeeks clicked to reopen vote documentation. The Vrithake general whispered, "She should have screamed. She should have begged," said the Maltheragas. Instead, she walked away. Quiet. Straight-backed. Smiling faintly. The scent of chamomile still lingered. The holding cell on Zarthian wasn't a dungeon. Not precisely. It was minimalist, clinically white, and smelled faintly of sterilized oxygen. There was a bed, a light cube, and an observation screen embedded behind one mirrored wall. Evelyn sat cross-legged on the floor, notebook open, sipping lukewarm tea. They hadn't confiscated her cup. She waited 3 days before anyone dared approach her. When they did, it was a young Zarthian cadet. New uniform, nervous energy. Probably sent by higher-ups too scared to show their faces. "You're human," he said as though unsure. "Some days more than others," Evelyn replied, looking up. "You're what, 17? The cadet stiffened. 21 standard. She nodded. "Ah. So you're used to being underestimated." The cadet blinked. "That's good," she said. "You'll live longer." He opened his mouth, closed it again. He started. "I wanted to ask, why are you so calm?" Evelyn smiled. "Because you're asking that question." He looked utterly lost. She closed her notebook, stood, and walked over, not close enough to threaten, just close enough to unsettle. "There's something humans do very well, cadet. We wait." The cadet frowned. "For what?" She looked through the mirrored wall, knowing someone was listening on the other side. "For people to be sure they've won." Elsewhere, far from Zarthian, a Dalkari transport vessel entered hyperspace and never exited. Its last broadcast was static, followed by one word in Earth Standard, "Note." On the Vrith AK homeworld, a ceremonial statue of their war queen exploded during a parade. The casing bore no fingerprints, no DNA, only a message etched on the base: "Symbolism matters." Inside the Grand Assembly archive system, where Zeke clerks toiled with endless diligence, one discovered a virus embedded in the vote records. It rewrote the historical decision to read, "We request terms from Earth." The Zeeks attempted to delete it. The system locked. All terminals now displayed a rotating image. Evelyn's face. Blinking. Smiling faintly. On Zarthian, the cadet ran back into the hallway, breathless, babbling. The guards sent him away. Evelyn remained in her cell. She drew one final line in her notebook. Then she tore out the page and folded it into a crane. She held it up to the mirror. "I hope you're recording," she said softly, "because you're going to want to rewind this moment later." She set the crane down. Then, with absolute calm, Evelyn whispered, "Start." The lights in Evelyn's cell dimmed every 20 standard hours and returned 10 later, but she hadn't once used the bed. She preferred the floor. She claimed it reminded her of Earth. Grounded, cold, real. What unnerved her captors wasn't that she didn't complain. It was that she observed. Quietly. Constantly. Every shift change. Every blink of the power grid. Every subtle delay in food delivery. She counted aloud sometimes, fingers tapping her knee, as if syncing herself to a rhythm only she could hear. The guards rotated often, none lasting more than 2 days. Evelyn never raised her voice. She offered them tea. And every evening, she folded a new paper shape from her notebook. Cranes, stars, wolves, even a beetle once, and placed it near the mirrored wall with a single whispered phrase, "We're listening too." In a locked observation room above her cell, senior officers debated what to do. "She's just playing mind games," one hissed, a bulbous Zarthian with a nervous tail twitch. "No," said another older, his 4 hands clenched behind his back. "Mind games imply a goal. This one doesn't play. She waits. She's alone." The older one's eyes didn't move from the monitor. Are you sure? 6 light cycles away, in the shadowed barrens of the Kellerith moons, a mining station went dark. It had hosted 600 workers, mostly Malthera hybrids and human contractors. Only static came from its final transmission. A recovery team arrived to find the facility abandoned, untouched, without a single body. Except one. In the mess hall, a Dalkari admiral's son, posted for diplomatic morale, was found bound to a chair, unharmed, dazed, whispering the same phrase. She's the first. There are more. They watched us build everything. The report was suppressed. Official cause: foodborne hallucinogens. But word got out, and it began to spread. Back on Zarthian, Evelyn asked for a plant. The guard flinched, but didn't say no. He reported it up the chain. Days later, a small terracotta pot with a wiry blue creeper plant was delivered. She watered it with care. When asked why she wanted it, she replied, "Because roots matter, even in space." That night, a Zarthian colonel couldn't sleep. The memory of her words itched. So he accessed her intake logs. Time of arrival. Items logged. Bags scanned. But one item was missing from the record. A pen. They had never catalogued her pen. On the Malthera archive moon, a sentient fog being known for recording legal precedents detected a strange irregularity. In the record of the vote that had sentenced Earth to symbolic enslavement, something had changed. The footage showed the vote as unanimous. But the voice logs, recently unscrambled by human linguists, revealed hesitation. One representative had not voted aye. He had abstained. He had been found dead 2 days later. In his sleep. No sign of trauma. His last written entry, recovered from his quarters, read, "She blinked when I did. Like she already knew how I'd vote." The file was quietly marked corrupted. But the fog being could not forget. The Assembly sent a formal inquiry to Earth. It was not acknowledged. Earth's communication satellites appeared offline. Automated systems responded with mild apologies and cheery hold music. No one answered. No retaliation came. No ambassadors. No fleets. Instead, the disappearances began. One by one. A Zeke archivist in charge of human files. Gone. His office undisturbed. His scent evaporated. A Vrith AK colonel, who'd led Earth suppression campaigns, found floating in his home's low-gravity fish pond. Expression blank, eyes frozen wide. The Zarthian High Governor woke to find every screen in her quarters glowing with one phrase. "You voted. We listened." She resigned by midday. No one replaced her. In the cell, Evelyn hummed Earth lullabies. The young cadet returned, against protocol. "You shouldn't be this calm," he said, half-whispered. Evelyn looked up. "Why not? You've been here for over 20 days. No visitors. No protest from your people. No rescue." She raised an eyebrow. "You think rescue would be noisy?" He hesitated. "Wouldn't it be?" She smiled gently. "Then you don't know what a real rescue looks like." He glanced toward the mirror. He was shaking. "I think I made a mistake coming back," he whispered. Evelyn leaned forward, soft-voiced. "Then you'll understand this perfectly. You can't stop something once it's already inside." She didn't say, "you," like it meant him. She said it like it meant the entire galaxy. A military outpost on the edge of neutral space pinged an unidentified vessel. The ship had no ID, no transponder, no crew manifest. It answered only once. A human voice, female, said, "We're just returning what was given." Then the outpost lights went out. Every weapon turned inward. Security systems locked from within. 1 hour later, when a neighboring patrol arrived, they found the station abandoned. Its corridors were swept clean. But in the main war room, on every terminal, the screens glowed with a list. Species names, dates, coordinates, all redacted. Except for one line, pulsing in bold. She was never alone. She was first. On Zarthian, Evelyn stood. She had not been instructed to. She faced the mirrored wall. I assume you're recording. Silence. I know you've noticed by now. You've lost 14 commanders, 2 supply chains, a dozen data cores. But still, you sit there waiting for me to break. She tilted her head, as if she could see the old commander in the shadows behind the mirror glass. I was sent here alone because you needed to believe I was alone. You think the galaxy is a machine. That if you pull a lever, a vote, the parts will obey. Her voice dropped, almost fond. You've never met a species who doesn't follow the blueprint. The commander behind the glass said nothing, but his breath shook. Evelyn stepped back. They're not coming for me. That would be too obvious. She gestured to the floor, now covered in dozens of origami shapes, each made from the pages of her notebook. They're already here. All of them. Every human diplomat you ever hosted. Every janitor you overlooked. Every barmaid on your colony stations. She crouched beside the plant, now curling upward in a strange, unnaturally fast pattern. She plucked one leaf. It shimmered, briefly, revealing circuitry beneath. You thought we were slow, primitive, scattered. She set the leaf beside the crane. But the thing about humans? She looked directly at the glass now. We're pattern makers. We walk into your world and listen. We pretend to be small, to make you feel big. The mirrored glass cracked. Just a little. Just enough. And then, she whispered, we start to write the ending. High orbit. A Vrith AK cruiser exploded. No energy signature. No missile trail. No sabotage found. Inside what remained of the bridge logs, one entry looped infinitely. Earth does not need a fleet. We are the storm you invited inside. The assembly, now panicked, called for an emergency reconvening. But one by one, their own transportation systems began to fail. Communications jammed. Systems reverted to archaic modes. And across 3 sectors, a repeating transmission overrode public announcements. You were never gods to us. You were architects of your own arrogance. And we, quietly, designed your undoing. On Zarthian, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, not in failure, but with intent. A message rolled across the mirrored wall, written in elegant cursive font, looping once, then vanishing. You took the first piece. Now the board moves. Evelyn picked up the pen, the one they never logged. She wrote one more line in her notebook, tore the page carefully, folded it into a human hand. She placed it beside the crane, the wolf, and the beetle. Then she stepped into the center of the cell, folded her arms, and waited. The corridors outside Evelyn's cell were silent now. Not orderly. Not stable. Silent, like the breathless second before a dropped glass hits the floor. The Zarthian command base had entered cautious lockdown, a protocol designed not for war, but for confusion. Systems were still online. Orders were still given. But no one trusted the lights. Or the air. The commander hadn't slept in 30 hours. Neither had his aides. The internal systems reported no breach. Yet terminals flickered. Navigation panels twitched. Security footage showed movement in hallways long since evacuated. And Evelyn Park hadn't moved from her floor. She'd begun arranging her origami. Not stacking, not aligning, arranging. In a spiral, outward from the center, each folded piece marked with a different human name. Some real, some aliases, some code names whispered in places only humans seemed to survive. The guards stopped laughing at it on day 26. On day 27, one of them quit. She had spoken only once that day. The guard had brought in food and noticed something etched into the wall above her bed. Gentleness is a warning shot. He asked if she'd written it. Evelyn smiled and said, No. I just copied it. The message hadn't been there the day before. Security logs confirmed. No one entered the room except her. He left and never returned. 6 systems away, beneath the frozen moons of the Tulkan Reach, A Malthera archive node exploded. No external strike. No internal fault. It simply folded. Not just physically, digitally. Its records collapsed into recursive gibberish, centuries of law and precedent rewritten into poetry, riddles, and untraceable earth slang. The last readable entry was in human cursive. The only thing more dangerous than forgetting your enemy is convincing yourself you never had one. The Dalkari blamed electrical instability. The Zeeks blamed software drift. The Vrith AK began sharpening their blades and not sleeping. And Earth still hadn't responded. The cadet returned again. He was older now, or looked it. His eyes darted in new patterns. His uniform was crisp, but the seams had been restitched by hand. He entered without speaking and placed a file down on the small metal table bolted to the floor. His hands shook. Evelyn didn't look up from her arrangement. "You want me to read it," she said. "So you don't have to say it out loud." He didn't respond. She picked up the file. Inside were reports. Disappearances. Mutinies. Civilian outages. Military sabotage. Some quiet, some explosive, all statistically impossible. She closed it. "You're wondering why I haven't left yet." He swallowed hard. "You could've. Weeks ago." She nodded. "Easily. Then why haven't you?" Her voice was kind. "Because the longer I stay in this cage, the more you'll believe I'm powerless. And belief," she tapped the folder, "is what built your species' entire hierarchy. Not truth. Just comfort." The cadet hesitated, then sat on the ground across from her. It was forbidden. But he did it anyway. "I used to think humans were fragile," he said. "All the stories we heard. Panic. Or poisoning their own water." Evelyn nodded. "All true. We're difficult. But now I think—" He paused. "You're not fragile. You're elastic." She looked at him, quietly proud. "That's close," she whispered. "We bend so far you think we broke. Then we stand up behind you." The lights in the hallway flickered, just once. The cadet looked toward the door. "You're already in the system, aren't you?" he whispered. "Your people." Evelyn smiled faintly. "We were in the system before you designed it." He stood to leave, too shaken to ask more. As the door slid open, she called after him. "Next time you walk into a room and feel safer just because someone is smiling, ask yourself why that smile came so easily." On the Zeke homeworld, a vote was called to rescind the enslavement decree. 280,000 archival workers were ordered to delete all references to Evelyn Park's designation as a symbolic detainee. 3 seconds after the vote passed, every voting record self-erased. Zeke servers reloaded with one new header. She voted first. Security officials ran diagnostic reports and were met with nonsensical results, charts measuring rainfall in cities that didn't exist. But one image returned repeatedly. A pair of human boots. Worn leather, dusted soles, standing on alien marble. Back on Zarthian, the commander stood in the observation room, arms crossed, breath held, eyes locked on the woman who was no longer just a diplomat. He had fought in wars, killed, negotiated. He had seen creatures tear planets in half and call it strategy. But nothing unnerved him like the stillness of Evelyn Park. She'd begun cleaning the cell. Not for comfort. For arrival. Each corner dusted. The table wiped. Even the mirror, she polished it with a strip of her own sleeve. Every move deliberate. Like she was preparing for guests. "End it," his advisor whispered. "Kill her before it spreads further." The commander didn't answer. She didn't seem like someone you could kill. That night, the station went dark. No warning. No sirens. Just dark. Then backup lights blinked to life. Red. Dim. Emergency code E37. Human infiltration. The station's command deck received a single broadcast. No visuals. No encryption. A woman's voice. Not Evelyn's. Another. outcome. Warm. Unapologetic. This is Section Lead Vega. All key assets confirmed. Local resistance minimal. Per phase Theta. No engagement unless provoked. Diplomat Park remains untouched. She asked for a longer game. Consider her request granted. The message ended with a sound no alien recognized. But humans would have. A soft breath, like someone removing a pair of boots at the end of a long day. The commander raced to the cell. He reached it breathless, hand trembling as he opened the observation panel. Evelyn was sitting calmly, sipping tea. Around her, the origami was gone. In its place stood 6 boots. Human. Worn. Dusty. They hadn't been there before. He unlocked the door manually. Stormed in. "You've declared war," he said, voice cracking. She looked up. "We don't declare war. We warned you what we do when asked to kneel. You set traps. You invaded our systems. You—" She stood. The pen in her pocket glinted under the emergency light. "You voted," she interrupted. "And now we're correcting the outcome." "You're just one person," he hissed. She stepped closer, boots echoing against the cell floor. "No," she said, gaze sharp enough to slice through his certainty. "I'm just the first one you saw." Her boots hit the threshold, that invisible line between her cell and everything else. She looked down. "I wasn't supposed to step out until the signal," she murmured. She looked up again. "But I suppose we can adjust." She stepped out. The commander didn't move. Couldn't. Because the walls didn't hum anymore. They breathed. The power returned not with a hum but a whisper. Terminals displayed Earth's crest. Surveillance systems reversed. The watchers were now being watched. The station wasn't offline. It had been reprogrammed. Every camera pointed inward, toward the assembly's chosen jailers. She passed him without a glance. He turned, frozen. "Where are you going?" he asked. She didn't stop walking. Her boots hit steel, then tile, then the soft hum of the diplomatic corridor they'd led her through weeks before. "To clean up the vote," she said. The assembly was unraveling. There was no declaration, no broadcasted ultimatum, no signature battle to mark the beginning of what historians would later call the submission reversal. Just silence. Coordinated, sharpened silence. The kind that came not from fear, but from decision. One by one, worlds blinked offline, systems misfired, orbital satellites turned inward, and data vanished as if it had never existed. What unnerved the galactic powers wasn't just the chaos, it was that Earth hadn't taken credit. They hadn't stepped forward to boast or posture. They hadn't issued demands. They hadn't even replied to inquiries. Instead, they'd gone quiet. Evelyn Park was no longer in her cell. She walked the upper corridors of Zarthian Command as though they belonged to her, each step purposeful, her worn boots echoing down polished halls. No guard tried to stop her. Half had deserted. The other half were reconsidering the meaning of obedience. Doors opened for her now. Not because of clearance codes or access chips, but because the systems had learned her gait. She paused beside a console near the command deck. An aide stared at her, shaking. "You're not authorized," he whispered. Evelyn smiled. "I wrote the protocol that decides who is." Behind her, the mirrored windows displayed the floating fleet meant to protect Zarthian, the pride of half a dozen species, docked in precision. But they weren't moving. Not anymore. "Why aren't they firing?" the aide asked, almost pleading. "They can't." "Because of jamming?" "No," Evelyn said. "Because they're trying to calculate how to fire on ships that no longer exist in the same time signature." The aide blinked, too stunned to process. She left him there, trembling. A moment later, his screen blinked. A single message appeared, unprompted. "You never thought to ask how much we remembered." She descended the corridor staircase, boots thudding like a countdown. In a private war chamber deep within Malthera territory, gaseous elders attempted to reroute the collapsing hierarchy. They drafted apologies, promises, and threats, all useless in a vacuum of control. One transmission leaked from their encrypted channels before their containment units failed. She was a diplomat the same way a scalpel is a spoon. No response followed. But the next scheduled supply ship arrived full of food. And nothing else. Every crate was sealed with ribbons and folded Earth-style tags that simply read, "Try again." Evelyn entered the command atrium of Zarthian. What remained of its leadership stood in uneasy formation, clutching protocols like Holy Writ. She didn't sit. She stood at the center and waited. One brave ambassador, a Vrith AK in half-polished armor, spoke. "You're staging a coup." Evelyn turned to him with calm interest. "A coup implies we want your throne. Don't you?" "No," she said. "We want the foundation burned. The throne will collapse on its own." The Dalkari representative trembled beside him, trembling gelatin folds quivering. "Why didn't you stop this when we voted?" it asked. "Why play the long game?" She looked toward the vast domed ceiling, where a faint light flickered, the assembly seal, rotating slowly, now inverted. "We needed to see who you'd become when you thought we couldn't answer back." She pulled something from her coat, her notebook. Worn, battered, now half empty. "I took notes," she said simply. The Zeke officer closest to the console hiss-clicked. "Human warfare is emotional. You rely on chaos, on instinct." Evelyn nodded. "Correct. You confuse unpredictability for disorder. But it's curated chaos. We only let you see the fire. Not the matches. Not the rain we planned after." The commander from her cell stepped forward, gaunt now, stripped of insignia. "Not out of shame, out of understanding. You were watching us the entire time." "No," she replied. "We were listening." Elsewhere, across distant quadrants, the listening became louder. Entire academic sectors dedicated to human behavior found their archives overwritten. One system school of xenopolitics discovered that every human psychology paper they'd used as foundation had been subtly altered, edited by the very humans they thought were being studied. The margins of ancient texts now held annotations. "We told you we were dangerous. You just kept calling it poetry." In orbit, the fleet captains debated evacuation. They argued in encrypted channels, bouncing calls through failing satellites. One Vrith AK warlord screamed, "She has no weapons. She's one diplomat." "No," someone answered. "She's the witness. We let her in. We let them all in." "What does that mean?" "It means we threw open our gates to the wolf because she wore a smile and brought a book." That captain went silent after that. When his ship finally opened fire, it struck only empty space. The target had been a projection, layered inside their own radar. When they tried to lock again, the screen flickered to static. Then a single frame. Evelyn's boots. Phil. Waiting. Back in the atrium, Evelyn flipped her notebook open. One last page. "This isn't an invasion," she said. "It's a return." "To what?" She looked around. "To the truth. To the quiet we let you have while we waited for your vote. To the patience we extended, knowing how this would end." The Malthera elder tried a new approach. "What do you want?" Evelyn stepped forward. "We want you to know we never needed to be loud to be dangerous." Her voice dipped. "We want you to remember how silent we were before the first system fell." She stepped to the console. They let her. A flick of her pen, its cap unscrewed. She pressed the tip to the control panel. The interface bled. That was the only word the logs would later agree on, bled. Light leaking like ink. Symbols rearranging. Circuitry screaming in binary pulses. In 48 systems, across thousands of worlds, the interface reset. New headers. New icons. Human Override Protocol. Phase 8. One species, the Starro, attempted resistance. Their homeworld activated a pre-coded planetary defense grid. The grid activated, then turned toward the planet it was meant to defend. It didn't fire, but it locked. and began counting. Downward. The assembly fell silent again, not with fear, but with reckoning. Evelyn's hands never left her sides. One delegate finally asked, "Why her? Why you? Why send you first?" Evelyn glanced toward the mirrored ceiling. Her voice softened. "Because I speak softly. Because I remember names. Because I listen. Because I smile when I'm insulted and nod when I'm underestimated." She walked down the steps of the atrium. And because someone needed to make you feel safe while the others built the cage. Behind her, the system sealed. Power routed to an origin point. Zarthian servers had become the central spine of what remained of galactic coordination. She was now its only administrator. They hadn't noticed until too late that the Earth diplomatic cloud shared its architecture. She stepped onto the central dais and set her notebook down. On the cover, a small insignia. Human. Military adjacent. No official branch. Beneath it, one word. Listen. A deep tone echoed through the chamber, one not generated by tech. Every delegate clutched their ears. Some wept. It wasn't pain. It was realization. Recognition. An audio trigger. Buried deep in their stations, installed during every peace mission, every relief drop, every translated cultural exchange. Evelyn leaned in. "We gave you warnings dressed as jokes." Her eyes flicked toward the camera, broadcasting still. No one had turned it off. "And now," she whispered, "the quiet ends." In the recording that would later become historical canon, the feed captured only this. Evelyn Park, standing in a room of trembling leaders. She doesn't yell. She doesn't move fast. She simply says, "Next time, ask why we didn't scream." Then she presses the final command. The lights don't flash. The walls don't shake. Instead, the galaxy holds its breath and listens.